It's the most wonderful time of the year to know all the great NCAA legends playing for their alma maters, to see who will be number one. We got upsets and last second follies and all the follies. There'll be scary ghost stories telling of the team's glories of sucking so long, long ago. But now, here is the thing you need to know. There'll be 64 teams going for one title, and the defending champs are in. They'll be in tough. Oh, yes, they will. Because it's the most wonderful time of the year. Hey there, how there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to the preview video for the NCAA SuperCUp, which I do every year in December. It will be starting up this Monday, December the 5th, with 4 games a day, except for the Saturday the 10th, because that's an 8-game day, if you will. So here's the format of how you qualify for this 64-team tournament. Obviously, it's hard sometimes because, how many teams per conference? So, using this college football encyclopedia thing, I went through each team, I went through each conference, and based on how many teams were projected to win 8 games by Athlon, that's how many per conference, and based on things. I got to 49 with 15 wildcard teams. So anyway, just to give you notes that how many teams from each conference has qualified? Good question. Well, as you can see, did Houston qualify or no? Oh, they did. No, they didn't. I have to do a little bit of house cleaning here before I show you all right, so each team circled is the team that has qualified, and each team with the scratch marks did not qualify. So out of the American Conference, we saw Cincy, Central Florida, SMU, and Tulane get in. Show you the ACC. And you see the ACC, that you'll see Clemson, NC State, FSU. FSU qualified? Huh. Oh, I guess they did. I thought FSU missed out. Huh. Shows how much I know. Clemson, NC State, Florida State qualified. Louisville, Syracuse, Pitt, North Carolina, and surprisingly Duke all qualified. So the ACC has 8 teams in this tournament. The American has 4. The Big 12 has 7. You see right here. And that is Baylor, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas. Texas qualified? I thought Texas missed out. Oh, Texas plays on Sunday. Oh, okay. Kansas State, Texas Christian, and Kansas. Surprised how Texas Christian were projected to be 6-6, and yet they're almost going to win the Big 12 championship. Who knows? The Big 10 sees 8 teams themselves. See there? So the teams are. Oh, did the page flip? Sorry, I think the page flipped. Sorry about that. So yeah, so circle means you're in. So that means Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Purdue, Iowa, Minnesota, and surprisingly Illinois are in. The Conference USA. Conference USA had 4 teams qualify. Show you that. Yep, there you go. All right, so San Antonio, Western Kentucky, North Texas, and Middle Tennessee all qualified. In the MAC, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in the MAC qualify. See up there. And they were Miami of Ohio University, Toledo, and Eastern Michigan. The Mountain West had 6 schools qualify. See there? There were Boise, Air Force, Wyoming, Fresno, San Diego State, and San Jose State. The Pac-12 had 7 schools qualify. See there? Those are Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Washington State, Utah, USC, and UCLA. The SEC got 8 schools getting in, which was pretty good. See there? The 8 SEC schools were Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Bama, LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. And the Sun Belt got 4 themselves. Good. So it was Appalachian State, well, playing in place of Idaho. Idaho was in the game. Well, Marshall, South Alabama, and Troy all qualified. So you had 64 teams. So a certain amount of teams with 8+ wins that would get qualified automatically, and then you had the wildcard teams. North Texas, Miami of Ohio, and Brigham Young had to win play-in games. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention BYU, Notre Dame, and Connecticut are the independents that qualified. Obviously, they're not within each conference. So we had 64 teams. There were a lot of famous schools like Florida. Miami didn't qualify for the tournament. I think UCLA didn't qualify. No, they did qualify. Stanford didn't qualify. Arkansas didn't qualify. You know, there were some schools that should have qualified, but they didn't. So, yeah. So, I went through 64 teams. Now, I know every school had 12 games in real life, but I added a 13 simulated game. So, anyway, just going to my, where's my, do I not have, did I get rid of it, or do I still have it? I think I got rid of it, didn't I? Banana peels, I got rid of it. Now, okay, never mind. All right, so I'm going to show you the game I have for this tournament. And it's right here. So, once again, we will be ready for NCAA Football 11, one of the greatest games around. Ba-bam! Huh? NCAA 14 for the PS3. Well, if you've been hanging around my YouTube stuff, you know that I've been doing video games based off of PS3 games. And you've been thinking, hang on, don't you usually have a PS2? Well, I did, but mine burned out. So, luckily, thanks to one of my supervisors at Canadian Tire actually wanting to give a PS3 to me for free, thank goodness for that. So I got the PS3 and had it hooked up in summertime. So now I had to switch a lot of things. If you've been hanging around my Cutter Historical YouTube channel, you'd be like, wait a minute, isn't there usually a baseball tournament for the PS2/3? There is, or I forgot all about it. And by the time that happened, I'm like preparing for the NCAA tournament, and I've also got, you know, my PC games like All-Star Golf, like HG Golf and hockey and baseball I got to work on. So I'm like, shoot. So there's a good chance this year there won't be any tournament. I'm hoping for hope beyond hope that I do another tournament. Anyhow, doesn't matter. So yeah, so NCAA 14 has replaced it for this tournament only. Okay, so anyway. Now, there are some big changes between NCAA 11 and 14. The big change, of course, is the presentation that, you know, you'll see the scoreboard at the bottom of the screen and then, you know, all the running around and all that bull crap. There's also the case of some teams being in NCAA 14 and some not in NCAA 11 and vice versa. Now, NCAA 14 does not have the IAA schools or the FCS schools, as they should be properly called, but I call them IAA still. Like you see your Eastern Michigan, your Eastern Washington, your Eastern Kentucky, your Youngstown, they're not in the game whatsoever. So basically, those schools were ineligible. Like there were one key move, if you know in real recent history that Idaho moved from IA to IAA, like they dropped the conference. You know, they're in NCAA 14, and since Appalachian State is not in the game, they were not a Division One by 2014. So I said Appalachian State will be Idaho. Like Idaho dropped, but Idaho will be Appalachian State because I know they were Sun Belt team. So that's why Idaho's in the tournament. Now, you know, that means stadium selection will be hard for the tournament too because, you know, I had the pleasure of the IAA schools. I contemplated putting stadiums of schools that didn't qualify, like Arkansas, Florida, and Miami, possibly hosting first round neutral site games. But then when I saw the repertoire stadiums like the high schools and a few other neutral site games, I'm like, I'll put them there. Might as well. And you can't randomize the stadiums like I do. Like doing randomization, it would be actually pretty cool and all that. So yeah. Okay, so 64 teams, as I said, got in. Now, of course, as every year happens, is that a certain number of teams per week. You had to win 7 games to qualify. Sorry, because of the way my camera is, I have to point differently. I think, right? 7 backwards. Yeah, like this. Sorry. I think it's better on my left hand. So you had to win 7 games. Now, to qualify, you either had to win 7 realistic games or 6 plus the simulated game, which makes 7. And if a team actually was in a position to get their 7th win before playing the simulated game, then that team, then they lose the game. Then their opponents would automatically get that win. Or if you are basically done like dinner, you're at 6 losses before that game, you can forfeit to the other team and all that. So yeah, so we got 64 teams with 7 or more wins. Now I gotta say, Brigham Young beating Stanford like literally the last hour of the NCAA season, and I know Army and Navy are supposed to play next week, which count, but it doesn't really count because I think Army and Navy are not bowl eligible. Regardless, you know, with BYU beating Stanford, almost the last game of the season, in the regular season, they actually swiped a spot away from East Carolina because East Carolina beat the Temple. And because of a tiebreaker rule with Memphis, East Carolina was going to get that last spot in the tournament. But because Brigham Young, because the Independents didn't have a third team for automatic qualification, if BYU had lost, East Carolina would have swiped that stuff. Like North Texas beat Rice and Miami of Ohio beat Ball State on the final weekend because they faced each other head to head. So anyway, I'm going to go through all 64. I'm going to go through all the brackets and all of that, and just show you the brackets near the end. I know it's two-sided. You'll see the back. Okay, so the number 1 overall seed was Georgia, based on their performance. So the 4 number 1 seeds were based off of their performances, well, the random drawing, and then their performances within the season. So Georgia is the 1 seed in the Sugar Bowl bracket. So they will be playing the quarterfinal or the group final at the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. So Georgia is the 1 seed. They take on Brigham Young, who got in the last spot. They will be playing that game. The 16-1 game. The 8-9 game is Louisiana, number 9 versus number 8, Texas, San Antonio. But because San Antonio plays at the Alamo Bowl, San Antonio cannot play at home in a future bowl stadium. So that means that Louisville will get to host Texas San Antonio at the Papa John's Bowl. But the joke will be on them because Louisville will be the road team. I'm thinking about putting Louisville as the road team in their own stadium, but, you know, it is what it is. The 4-13 match in the Sugar Bowl, number 4 will be North Carolina, number 13 Kansas State. As neither school have an appropriate field, they will be playing in a neutral site for the first round. All first round games are played at the school stadiums unless they are inadequate in my mind, or they are hosting another bowl game. They're hosting a bowl game because the bowls, the bowl stadiums will be used for the round 32 onwards. Okay, so the 5-12 matchup is Cincy versus Western Kentucky. So Cincy will host Western Kentucky in the game. And one key note is that you heard me say things like Louisville and Cincy. Yes, they're both part of the American division. However, the rule of thumb I try to follow is no two teams from the same conference can be in the same 14 pool. Like, could face each other before the third round, which is the round of 16. If you have a conference versus conference matchup in the round of 16, that's fine. But otherwise, you can't do that. All right, so Georgia versus BYU, San Antonio versus Louisville, North Carolina, Kansas State, Cincy, Western Kentucky. The 15-2 game is number 15 will be Idaho via App State, and number 2 will be UCLA. The game's at the Kibbie Dome in Idaho, only because UCLA Stadium is home to the Rose Bowl Stadium, and obviously you can't have some kind of major advantage. The 10-7 game is Mississippi State versus Boise. And since Boise hosts the Potato Bowl, Boise will not get to host the game. And I don't think Mississippi State would host the game. So that's a neutral site game. The 14-3 game is number 14 will be South Carolina, number 3 Texas Christian at TCU Stadium. And number 11 Duke will face number 6 Illinois. Usually it's like a basketball matchup, but no, it's not basketball. It's college football. All right, so the BYU, Georgia, Louisville, San Antonio 14 group, there will be second round games. Round of 32 games will be at the Alamo Bowl, the Belk in San Antonio, the Belk Bowl in Charlotte, the Idaho Bowl in Boise, and the Armed Forces Bowl in Texas. I found out that TCU Stadium is not home to the Armed Forces Bowl. That's why Texas Christian got to host the game. I would probably have made a neutral site. All that. So yeah. So the Alamo, Belk, Idaho, and Armed Forces Bowl, they'll be playing round of 32 games. Round of 16 games will be played at the Chick-fil-A/Peach Bowl Stadium and the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. Well, Chick-fil-A in Atlanta. And the quarterfinals is the group stage in New Orleans. All right, so we got the Orange Bowl, and the Orange Bowl being played at Miami at Orange Bowl Stadium. The group final or the quarterfinal. Okay, so the 16-1 matchup is Middle Tennessee's number 16. They'll face Clemson as a 1 seed at Clemson Memorial Stadium. The 8-9 matchup, number 8 will be Baylor, number 9 being Ohio. That game at Baylor Stadium. So the Ohio Bobcats will head to Baylor to face the Bears. And the winners of those two games will be playing at the New Mexico Bowl in the round of 32. The 13-4 game in Orange Bowl will be Fresno, number 13. Number 4 is Oregon State. They will be actually playing neutral site. I actually contemplated putting the game at Oregon State being the 4 seed, but too little too late. The 12-5 matchup, number 12 Houston faces number 5 Penn State. And Penn State winning on a field goal at the last possible second last year's tournament. So Penn State, who is known for chokery, actually took the 2021-22 tournament. So they're the defending champs. They'll host Houston at Penn State's Beaver Stadium. And if they win, they face either Fresno or Oregon State. That game will be at the Wild Wing Bowl in Tempe, Arizona, home to the ASU campus. All right, so the 15-2 matchup is Wisconsin versus Ole Miss. We're thinking Wisconsin's a 15 seed. Yes, they are. They qualified late. And they didn't get the right number for the draw. So Wisconsin has to face Ole Miss. They'll host the game, but Ole Miss will be the home team, quote unquote. The 10-7 matchup is UConn versus South Bama. That would be at a neutral site. But that will also be big because I have decided, with my wisdom, knowing that UConn and South Bama don't really have any NCAA alumni, they will be actually replaced, well, quote unquote replaced by Canada State and Blue Shirt Underground University. So Canada State and BSU will be filling in for UConn and South Bama automatically. On the occasion that I still have my PS3 and still be able to play NCAA 14 for football, obviously, then UConn and South Bama will automatically get berths into the tournament because I'm not going to change those things. Now, of course, NCAA 14 lets you build a school, but you have to do so online. And of course, 8 years later, they're not going to let you do it. So that's the problem. So there were no spots given to the creative schools like, DC, Alaska, Cleveland, Canada State, and BSU, like I always do. Or Empire State, as I call them. I should call them. So yeah, that's the problem, though. So I have to fill out those rosters and see what I can do. All right, so that's a 10-7 matchup. The winner of that faces Wisconsin or Ole Miss at the Heart of Dallas Bowl at the old Cotton Bowl Stadium, not the new Cotton Bowl Stadium because that's Cowboy Stadium. And finally, in the Orange Bowl, number 14 Purdue takes on number 3 Tennessee at Neyland Stadium, and number 11 Air Force faces number 6 Toledo at Toledo's Glass Bowl Stadium. So the winner of those two games will go to the GoDaddy Bowl in Birmingham. So New Mexico Bowl, Wild Wing Bowl, the Heart of Dallas Bowl, and the GoDaddy Bowl will be around 32 games within the Orange Bowl bracket. Then you go to either the Hawaii Bowl or the Music City Bowl for the round of 16, and then the quarterfinals at the Orange Bowl. All right, so yeah, I'll just give you the information and all that. I know that you'll probably see the back page and all that, but yeah, that's how it's done. All right, so here we go. So the Cotton Bowl bracket will have the 1 seed is Bama out of the Cotton Bowl bracket. They'll face Miami of Ohio, who beat Ball State on the final weekend. So Miami of Ohio will face Bama, and yes, it will be Roethlisberger versus Stapler. And the winner of that game faces either number 8 SMU or number 9 FSU. Since SMU does not have a bowl game, SMU is allowed to host FSU. And the winner, and those two teams, like Bama, Miami, Florida State, SMU, will be playing at the Compass Bowl, I think in Mobile, Alabama. Well, anyway, in the Cotton Bowl bracket, the 13-4 matchup, number 13 is Washington State. Number 4 is Oklahoma State. They'll be playing at Oklahoma State University Stadium. The 12-5 matchup, number 12 is Central Florida. Number 5 is Utah. They are going to be playing at a neutral site. Utah said that they can't host, and Central Florida wouldn't be able to host because the Capital One Bowl is at their stadium in Central Florida, so they can't host. So they'll be at a neutral site. The winners of the Oklahoma State and the Utah games will be in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Bowl. And no, it's not at Allegiant Stadium because this game, of course, the game's from 2014. Oklahoma is the 15th seed. They take on number 2 Syracuse, while Oklahoma qualified late. That's why they got such a low seed. They'll be playing at Syracuse, and yes, Syracuse will host that game at the Carrier Dome. The 10-7 matchup is Notre Dame versus Minnesota. Notre Dame clinching late, Minnesota the 7th seed. But because I wasn't really entrenched with Minnesota Stadium, Notre Dame Stadium will host, but Minnesota will be the home team, quote unquote. The winner of those games, the Syracuse and Minnesota games, will play at the Military Bowl in Washington, D.C. The 14-3 matchup is Eastern Michigan, number 14 versus number 3, the Ohio State assholes. The Ohio State University. Meanwhile, number 11 will be Wyoming. They'll take on number 6, USC. If you're thinking, how can USC be this bad? Well, remember, when I start doing the numbers for the teams and all that, USC was kind of one of the late ones. It's random draw, too. So the winner of the Ohio State and the USC game will be playing at the Big Ten Championships venue in Indianapolis. The round of 16 games for the Cotton Bowl bracket are at the Cap One Bowl in Orlando or the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, and then the winners of those two will go to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Or Arlington, if you will. All right, so we got that. The Rose Bowl bracket, the last bracket, the number 1 seed is Michigan. They'll take on North Texas, who beat Rice on the final day. So North Texas will face Michigan at Michigan Stadium. And the 9-8 matchup, number 9 will be Kansas, number 8 Kentucky. And yes, this is college football, not basketball, and it will be a neutral site game. So Kansas will take on Kentucky. The winner of that matchup against Michigan's matchup will be at this Little Caesars Bowl in Detroit, Michigan, at Ford Field. It's funny how Kansas qualified. Anyway, number 13 seed is NC State. They take on number 4 Washington, the Huskies. home to Jason Lundgren. And yes, it'll be at Husky Stadium. The 12-5 matchup is Pitt versus LSU at LSU Stadium, the 5 seed. Where those two games will be going to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana. All right, so the 15-2 matchup, number 15 in the Rose Bowl is Marshall. They'll take on number 2 Tulane, but Tulane, because they share a stadium with the Sugar Bowl and the New Orleans Bowl, they can't play at home. Marshall says no playing at home, so they'll be playing at a neutral site. And the winner of that game faces the 10-7 winner, which is Iowa versus Texas. And Texas will host that game. So the winner of those two matches will be at the Meineke Bowl in Houston. And the last matchups to see, the 14th seed San Diego State, they take on number 3 Oregon at Oregon Stadium at Autzen. And the 11-6 matchup is Troy versus San Jose at a neutral site. And the winners of those last two games will play at the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee, not Nashville at the Mississippi Bowl. The round of 16 games will be at the Outback Bowl in Tampa, or you'll be at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. So that's that. All right, give you guys the brackets. Those brackets. Hopefully you can see. Sorry, just make that a little closer. Okay, so now you'll be thinking, isn't there a stadium that I haven't talked about? That's right. It's the Fiesta Bowl. Now, because I found affiliations with Clemson, Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia, the Fiesta Bowl was the only one left out. But actually, good news, because the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona gets to host the Final Four and the championship game. So the two semis and the finals will be at the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. I think that I might change it to maybe Miami. I'm going to probably say Miami or New Orleans will get next year's tournament. I know the Rose Bowl hosted last year, I think, right? So I'll have to go through the rotation and see what I need to do. I know that in years past I did the Final Four at I did the Final Four at EA Sports Stadium, but I got to change that now. So I changed it to a main stadium. Now, like the past 2 years of NCAA SuperCUp tournaments, COVID will not affect this whatsoever. So it's not like you're in a pod system. It's not. We won't see an NCAA fights COVID game, which I did the past 2 years. We will see the championship and all that. Now comes the biggest thing, the schedule. That's right. So here's how the schedule will go down. As I said earlier, each day from the 5th to the 11th, the week of December 5th to 11th will have 4 games in it. However, because there's 32 games, that'd be 8 days. So because Saturday, it's college football day, so Saturday will have 8 games in total. And yes, there will be Sunday football. 4 games on Sunday. So using randomization and, times and all that, it was hard. So I will be doing videos before, like, reviewing the previous round and then going to the next round. So I will do a round of 64 review and a round of 32 preview, which I will tell you the schedule. So anyway, so the first day schedule, if I can get my notebook, I'm going to be reading off my notebook. All right, so the first day is Monday, December the 5th. The first game will be Kansas State, North Carolina at 12:30 Eastern Time, which will be a neutral site game. Second will be Florida State versus SMU at 3:30. The early evening game is Houston, Penn State, and then it's Kansas, Kentucky. We'll finish off the day at a neutral site. And, of course, it'll be always highlights. You'll see highlights of those 4 games. Tuesday the 6th, the first game will be Texas, San Antonio versus Louisville. Then it's Minnesota, Notre Dame, Purdue, Tennessee, and Troy, San Jose. Wednesday the 7th, the first game will be Ohio versus Baylor. And then it's Pitt versus LSU, South Carolina, Texas Christian, and Central Florida, Utah. Thursday the 8th, first game will be Air Force versus Toledo. Then NC State, Washington, Oklahoma, Syracuse, and UCLA, Idaho. Friday the 9th, first game is Western Kentucky Cincy. Then it's Marshall Tulane, Washington State, Oklahoma State, then Fresno, Oregon State. Saturday, 8 games. The first two, North Texas will face Michigan, Ole Miss versus Wisconsin, BYU, Georgia, Miami of Ohio versus Bama, Eastern Michigan, Ohio State, Middle Tennessee, Clemson, Mississippi State, Boise, and San Diego State, Oregon are all the games Saturday the 10th. And the final 4 games will be Sunday the 11th. The order is Duke, Illinois, UConn, South Bama, aka Kansas State, Empire State, Iowa, Texas, and Wyoming, South California, USC. As usual, I'll go through the schedule, like through the review/preview videos to show you what it's up. But I'll give you a quick one. So next week will be all the games from the 5th to the 11th. There'll be 4 games a day except for Saturday, which there'll be 8 highlights, of course. And then the round of 32 will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the next week. So it's the 14th to the 17th will be the round of 32, 4 games a day. And then the round of 16 will be, I'm thinking Thursday, Friday, but no. Yeah, it'll be Friday, Saturday. So the 23rd and the 24th will be games, round of 16 games that day, those days. And then the quarterfinals, the Sugar Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, all will be Tuesday, December 27th. The semifinals will be Thursday, December 29th, and New Year's Eve will be the final between the final 2 teams at the Fiesta Bowl. So who will win? I don't know who will win that great game, but we'll see what happens when we get there. We'll get there when we get there. So anyway, thanks for watching this preview video, and best of luck to your school and alma mater. I'm Jeff Diamond.